So lesson 4.4, we are factoring. As I said, probably did a chapter of factoring algebra 1. It's factoring in a lesson. So we're going to go through between today and tomorrow, we're going to go through all the different methods. Okay? So, first type of problem we're looking at is factoring expressions such as x squared plus bx plus c. Now, as you look at that, notice there is no number in front of x squared. Okay, it's just x squared plus bx plus c. What do we remember about these?
You need two sets of parentheses, and then you need to figure out what your signs are inside. And since it's a plus, you're going to look at the signs to the left, and they're both going to be the same. So it's going to be plus plus on the inside. And since there's no number in front of your x, it's going to be x plus, then x plus, and then you're going to figure out your number with the second in the parentheses.
Is it like whatever multiplies 20?
Yeah, and multiplies 20 and adds some like.
Okay, got it?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I like everything I just heard. Let's put it all together.
What did I hear?
Okay, that's my job here. I'm going to pull it all together for you. I'm not going to leave you hanging, okay? So first of all, x squared plus 9x plus 20. This is the type where you might hear it unfoiling. We're factoring it into two parentheses. Okay? X squared. How can we break x squared up? X and x. So the first thing in both parentheses is x and x. Are we okay with that part?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm not leaving anyone behind, so you have to tell me if you're not. Now, what you have to figure out are the numbers. And I don't necessarily think signs until I get later on. I've found out during the day that you guys tend to put signs in at the beginning.
Yeah, we put signs first.
So, and I tend to put my signs in when I put my numbers in. So, it kind of just depends. But regardless, we need numbers that do what to be 20.
Multiply to 20 and add to
Okay, so, and I'm going to say two numbers that give me a product of the C term. So the C term being the number at the very end. And they give me a sum of the B term. So when I say a product of the C term, a sum of the B term, I'm saying they multiply to be 20 and add to be 9. For some of you, and on certain problems, that's instant. You've got it. You're ready to move on to the next problem. Sometimes problems are harder than others, though, right? And sometimes we can't easily come up with that. So, what I look at, if it's a harder problem, I'm not sure what to do. I go through and list all my numbers that can give me a product of 20. And I go in order. That way I don't leave anything out. So if I start at 1, 1 times what is 20? 1 times 20. 2 times what is 20? 10. 3 times what is 20? Nothing. 4 times what is 20? 5. 5. And 5, what do you know about 5? We've already used that. So at this point, I know I have all of my pairs. Is there a pair that will add to be 9? 4 and 5. Okay. And I'm not saying you have to make this list of numbers every time. But when you get stuck on a really difficult one and you're not coming up with a pair, this is my go-to method. And that's why I'm teaching it. Okay? So now, we already talked about signs. If it multiplies to be positive 20, they have to be the same. If it adds to be positive 9, they both have to be positive. So we're going to have x plus 4 and x plus 5. It does not.
Sometimes it does if they're different signs, though. If you have a positive and a minus, then doesn't the bigger number go with the sign that's in the middle?
Okay, so what I'm going to say is it never matters which parenthesis goes first. In that, as long as you have the correct number with the correct sign. Okay, so here I wrote x plus 4 times x plus 5, and someone else wrote x plus 5 times x plus 4. It's equally correct. Okay, so the key is to make sure you have the right number and the right sign together. But as to which parenthesis comes first, it doesn't matter.
But with the sign, never mind, I'll just wait.
I say, wait, yeah, I think I know where you're going, but. Okay, questions on this one? Does it sound a little familiar?
Yeah, I was doing nice like 3.
Okay. Okay. Now, let me ask before I move on to the next 3. How can I check this?
No, you just go and FOIL it out.
FOIL it out, yes? And I'm not going to do that on every one of them, but just this one so we have the visual. So to FOIL it, x times x is x squared. X times 5? 5x. 4 times x? 4x. 4 times 5. Does that clean up to be my original problem? Okay. So it checks. Again, you don't have to check them all the time, but I'm just giving you guys some tips here.
I did one by myself just now.
Okay. Are we ready for B then?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me on B because I'm going to go through the whole thing to make sure we're heading the right place. X squared plus 14x plus 40. If you want to go ahead and think it, we're going to set up 2 parentheses. What goes in the front of each parenthesis? X, because x squared breaks up into x and x. We're going to need 2 numbers that give me a product of 40 and a sum of 14. Or if you prefer, it's 2 numbers that multiply to be 40 and add to be 14. If you've got those numbers, awesome. If you don't have those numbers, make a list. So when I make a list, and I'm just practicing on these first few, making my list, I start at 1. 1 times what is 40? 1 times 40. Then I try 2. 2 times 20. Then I try 3. 3 times a decimal. 4. 4 times 10. 5. 5 times 8. 6. No. 7. No. 8. I've already got it, right? So that tells me that I've got all my pairs. Do you see a pair that works? Okay. And since it multiplies to be positive and adds to be positive, they're both pluses. So one parenthesis is x plus 4, the other parenthesis is x plus 10.
So if one of them would like to come out to like -4 times like positive 10, would it be like x minus 4 and x plus 10? Oh, okay. So it just kind of goes with whatever.
Yep.
So Miss Braun, it makes me not.
Miss Rogers said something.
I'm guessing, I think Mrs. Rogers teaches the X method.
She does the X method, but what she told us, like with signs, is that like if the signs were different, the bigger number from like the X method that we did would go with the number in the middle, or with the sign in the middle.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, C. As we look at C, of any of these first 4, this is the one you're going to have to make the list of numbers, if you ask me. Because the pair of numbers is not obvious in my mind. And that's the math teacher in me saying that. Okay? I don't know, maybe you guys came up with it pretty easily, but x squared plus 14x minus 72. So, 2 parentheses. X squared is x and x. What needs to happen with my numbers here? A product of negative 72 and a sum of 14. Now, let me ask a question. If it multiplies to be negative, what combo gives me a multiply to be negative? Has to be some kind of positive and a negative, yes? Because 2 numbers that multiply to be a negative, it's going to be a positive and a negative. Now, if you want to go ahead and fill in a positive and a negative, you can. I normally just fill them in with my numbers. Okay? Okay, guys, products of 72. 1 and 72. 2 and 36. 3 and 24. 4 and 18. 5 and nothing, and 72 isn't divisible by 5. 6 and 12. 7 and doesn't work. 8 and 9. And that means we ask 9 and it's already there, so we're done. Do you see something that could work?
Yes.
What could work? 4 and 18. And the reason 4 and 18 work because
Oh, it'll be a negative.
we have to use a positive and a negative, right? What happens when you add a positive and a negative? They actually subtract. How do we get these to subtract to be positive 14?
Negative 4.
Negative 4, positive 18. You can check yourself here. Negative 4 times 18 is negative 72. Negative 4 plus 18 is positive 14. So what goes in my parentheses? Okay. Sum combo of x plus 18 and x minus 4. Are we doing better with this now?
Yeah.
See, and you guys thought you didn't remember this at all. Okay, D. What do you know about D? Okay.
And an X and an X.
2 parentheses. X and X. Okay. Minus and minus?
Yeah.
Because we're going to have a what? A product of 30 and a sum of negative 11. If it multiplies to be a positive, my options are either 2 positives or 2 negatives. How do I add to be a negative? You're going to have 2 negatives. So it is going to be 2 negatives. Products of 30. 1 and 30. 2 and 15. 3 and 10. 4 and doesn't go. 5 and 6. Which pair works?
Wait, let me think.
5
5 and 6.
And what were my signs?
Negative 5, negative 6.
Minus, minus. So sum combo of x minus 5 and x minus 6. We're feeling okay on the top section.
Yes.
May be bored because Mrs. Sargent took so long to do those, but that's okay. I'd rather you guys be bored than lost. Yes?
So for C, how it's positive 14 and then the negative 72, and then D it's the opposite. It's negative 11, positive 30.
Uh-huh.
Will it always be positive, negative, and negative, negative if the negative and the positive are in the same place that they are in these two problems?
Yes, I think so for your understanding. So D, anytime that they multiply to be positive and add to be negative.
Yeah.
Just like this, they will always be 2 negatives.
Okay.
On this one, when it multiplies to be negative and then adds to be positive, it will always be a mixture, a positive and a negative. And the same would be true, the example we don't have is if this was a negative 14 and a negative 72, that would also be a mixture.
Yeah.
Okay?
Is that right then what Miss Roger said about if the bigger number, if there is a minus and a plus, then it goes with the sign in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so like here, it's a positive 14, so that means my larger number is positive.
Okay.
If this had been a negative 14, then my larger number would have been negative.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, moving along then. Next section we are talking about factoring out GCFs, greatest common factors. Sound a little familiar? Anyone remember what a GCF is? Greatest common factor, but more details than that?
The biggest
Okay, biggest number that they can both be divided by. So as we look at 6n squared plus 9n, what can both of those terms be divided by? 6 and 9 both divide by 3? Okay. What about variables? Do they have any variables in common? Okay, so here's the deal. One has an n squared, so that means one of these has 2 n's. The other has a single n. What do they both at least have? 1 n. So you're going to, our GCF is 3n. When we talk variables like that, it's always the lower exponents.
That's what I said, and everyone told me no. We're good now.
We're guessing.
Well, I was right and told me no. So
Yes,
I'm so
okay.
honest about myself.
So, are we okay? So, 3n, 3 goes into 6 and 9. N with variables. Look for the lowest exponent. If they all have n's, look for the lowest exponent. That's your GCF. Now, to give your answer, the 3n goes out front. That's your GCF. The rest of my answer goes in parentheses. We get the rest of the answer by dividing by the GCF. So 6n squared divided by 3n? 2n. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Remember when you divide the n's, you subtract the exponents? So 2 minus 1 makes it into the first. Plus 9n divided by 3n. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And the n's will cancel.
Oh,
Are we all good on this one?
no, why it's being avoided?
Yeah.
Let's try B. 7n squared minus 21. Same first question. Is there a GCF?
Yes.
What do they have in common? 7. What about a variable? No, because since 21 has no variable,
7 has no
then it's just the GCF of 7.
variable.
I'm just writing the 7 underneath to show the division. You don't necessarily have to write that 7 underneath. Your answer is, we put the 7 out front. 7n squared divided by 7, n squared, minus 21 divided by 7, 3. Now, I probably should have started this on the last question, and I didn't. But at the end of every problem, you should always stop and ask yourself, am I done?
No, you're not done.
As in, make sure you have all factoring complete. So in this case, you're asking yourself, does n squared minus 3 continue to factor? Okay. And it does not. We are done. If 3 was a perfect square, we would have to continue, and we will, that's a different method. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But just kind of be aware there that you need to be asking yourself at the end of every problem, and am I done factoring? Okay, so we're good with B. Okay, C. My first question, is there a GCF? So they all divide by 2. We can agree, yes? Because they're all even. I know that 4 and 20 both divide by 4. So it's worth a check. Does 56 divide by 4?
Yes.
And it does. So that makes my GCF 4. What about a variable? No, because 56 has no variable. So 4 is going to go out front. 4x squared divided by 4 is x squared. 20x divided by 4? 5x. Minus 56 divided by 4? 14.
That's what I thought it was too. I really was.
What's the question I want you to ask yourself?
Can I
Are you
factor?
done?
Are we done? Can we factor any farther?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because up here you have x squared plus 9x plus 20, and then down here we have Never mind, guys. It was just a prank.
It's just a prank, bro.
No, it's just a prank.
It's just a prank.
Okay.
No, because 5 and 14 are, whatever it's called, perfect squares.
Now, don't just think GCF type factoring though. Think about the factoring we did up top. Does x squared plus 5x minus 14, does that factor like our top section was?
That's what I'm saying.
Meaning,
No, I said look, because x squared plus that. See, look, because if you look up here, you can see it says x squared plus 9x plus 20.
okay, meaning, I want you to check and see product and sum. Because this is in the format to where it could factor into 2 parentheses. If there's numbers that work. We would need 2 numbers that give me a product of negative 14 and a sum of, no, 5.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Use what it is after you divide by the 4. So what kind of numbers multiply to be 14?
Oh, I put 15 down there.
1 and 14 or 2 and 7?
2 and 7.
Could 2 and 7 work? Okay, let's figure out signs if it's going to work.
And negative is positive.
If it multiplies to be a negative, I need one of each sign, a positive and a negative. If it adds to be a positive, larger number positive, smaller number negative. And check yourself, negative 2 times 7 multiplies to be negative 14. Negative 2 plus 7 adds to be 5.
Therefore, I am smart.
Okay, so we have to write our final answer. What about this 4?
I left it on the outside.
Carry it down. You got it. I'm breaking this into 2 parentheses. X squared breaks into x and x. One of your parentheses is x minus 2. The other is x plus 7.
I knew we weren't finished. I told you guys we were not finished.
So, get in that habit of after you do a GCF, is there any more factoring that can be done?
So if it's in the factoring form, like the x squared plus b plus c, then you need to.
You should check. And I'll tell you, just because it's in the form x squared plus bx plus c does not guarantee that there will be numbers that work, but you should always check.
So if there are not numbers that work, you just leave it like that.
Mm-hmm. You'll get an example, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay.
I would be worried that I would not find those numbers, but really it does go.
And that's where you just have to be careful, check. Okay, D. First question,
Can you divide it? 9.
is there a GCF?
Yes, 9.
GCF of 9? What about a variable?
Nope.
But 9.
Okay, so random, I'm going to throw that in. She says 9, she randomly threw out or 3. Which are we supposed to use? 9 because it's the greatest. Okay? Sorry, just a good example for me to throw out there. So my 9 goes out front. Once I divide each term by 9, what remains? Okay, x squared plus x minus 2. My question to you, am I done?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
What should I check?
You should check if there's numbers that.
multiply the next 2 and have a sum.
Check your product and sum. So a product of negative 2, a sum of the invisible 1.
Yeah, just be 1.
Oh, just 1. Oh, that
Yeah.
makes more sense. Then we're not done. No.
What multiplies to be 2?
1 and 2.
1 and 2. If it multiplies to be negative 2, a positive and a negative. And if it adds to be positive 1, negative 1, positive 2. Can those numbers work? Yeah, so am I done? No. Carry the 9, 2 parentheses, x and x. One of them's x minus 1, one of them's x plus 2.
Bless you.
It's coming back to us.
It's back.
It's back? It's good.
It's kind of tough, but just a little bit different.
Yes.
Is there a sign that over this one?
Okay. E. What's my first question?
Does it faster?
Is there a GCF?
4.
Okay. Anything else to go with the 4? No, because 12 has no variable. So that 4 is going to go out front. What remains after I divide by 4? X squared plus 2x plus 3. What am I checking? Okay, check to see if you can factor in more, which means is there, or are there two numbers that give me a product of 3 and a sum of 2?
Yes.
Well, what's the only set of numbers that multiply to be 3? 1 and 3. Now, if it multiplies to be positive, what are my signs? If it multiplies to be positive, they're either both positive or technically both negative. Could 1 and 3 add to be 2? Could negative 1 and negative 3 add to be 2? No.
Dang it. I was wrong.
So, if the signs were different, it could work.
Pardon the interruption. Can I have your attention for a few end of the day announcements? High school cross country runners, you may
Okay, guys.
make sure to review.
Quiet and listen. We'll finish this last one here in a moment.
Middle School Student Council will be sponsoring Hat Day or Pajama Day this Thursday for a $1 donation. All money raised will go to the We Care Tree to benefit the Staley. Conwell Dog Lovers. This Wednesday, Coconut Humane Society will be here with some of their furry friends at lunchtime for a $1 donation. To the Humane Society, you can spend a few minutes with the dog and find out about some incredible volunteer opportunities. Seniors, don't forget to be checking by the guidance office for college choices, scholarships. There's information about college coaches. 7th and 8th grade girls basketball. Your first workout will be after school, Thursday in auxiliary gym. Additional workouts are posted on the Remind app. Remember, you must have a physical on file. Any questions? See Mr. Summers. Juniors and seniors, don't forget the ASVAB is November 12th. That is next Tuesday. If you have a question, if you are taking it, please see Mrs. Fernand. Thank you. Have a great evening.
I think so. Okay. F. I need to finish F. So, first question on F, is there a GCF? Okay. So, as we look, is there a traditional GCF? Number-wise, no, because there's nothing in front of x squared than the negative. They don't all have an x. However, that negative 1 does count as a GCF. There will be lots of times when we're doing things that I will say I want an x squared to begin my a positive x squared to begin my problem. And so in that case, we'll want to factor out a negative 1. So if I factor out negative 1, I'm going to put a negative 1 out front. Positive x squared minus 14x minus 32. What's my question? Okay, am I done? What are we checking for? Okay, product of negative 32, sum of negative 14. So think about pairs that multiply to be 32. 1 and 32, 2 and 16, no to 3, 4 and 8. Is there something that might work? Maybe 2 and 16 if we get the signs to work out?
Yes.
If it multiplies to be a negative, I need a positive and a negative. How do I get it to add to be negative 14? 14 is larger and negative, so 16 is negative. 2 is positive. Now, as I write my answer, the negative 1 out front carries down. I'm actually, though, instead of writing negative 1, I'm just going to write a negative So just realize that's equivalent. And then parentheses, x plus 2 and x minus 16. Okay, tomorrow I will continue on the back side. What I will tell you, 4.4 is available on homework. Okay, you are welcome to get started. However, I will tell you, we have not covered all topics here. Okay, the example we will start with tomorrow has a totally different method that we have not reviewed. Because here, there's a 2 out front of this x squared. And it's not a GCF. Sounds like some of you know X method. I teach product of AC. And so we'll work on this type of problem tomorrow. But just realize, I don't want you guys going through Math Excel and just guessing and not really getting anything out of it. So you're either going to have to remember it or you're going to want to wait.
I think that's kind of the same thing, but not having it set up like the X. Like,